Reports suggest that Al-Thani's bid to buy Manchester United could be successful. So I used a real-life season finish database, and I removed the Glazers, and made Sheikh Jassim the new owner of Manchester United. I also binned off Richard Arnold and John Murtagh too from the recruitment side of things because they are useless. All the debts have been wiped and United have very healthy budget. So let's check in after the window shuts and see what's happening at Old Trafford. First thing I noticed was that there was no members of staff signed, which means no new director of football. Even though last year I did an excellent job, I still received no calls. Transfer wise, the outs mainly seen Alex Telles make a permanent switch to Everton, but the ins were rather underwhelming. It's no secret Erik ten Hag is chasing a quality striker this summer, which is why I was shocked to see only Marcus Thuram sign on a free transfer who can play in that position. But then the other signing of Adrien Rabiot, also on a free transfer, and the right back Bellanova makes me think the updated database somehow stops the usual spending in this window, because they've literally only spent £5 million of their £180 million budget that they have. So I wonder whether the updated fixtures and the new database restricted them from actually making any signings that summer, because very little else happened in the summer either. At the end of the January window, Ten Hag hasn't exactly been killing it in the Premier League, with them still sat in 7th place. However, he has now spent £185 million, including bringing in 2 Premier League signings in Mason Mount from Chelsea for £102 million and Jarrod Bowen from West Ham for £49 million. That might be spending a little bit too much money for those 2 players. But he did also bring in 2 centre-backs with Andrea Carboni from Monza, a young Italian centre-back with a £4 million buy option, and a much better signing in Joseph Chitalo, who could be great if developed correctly, for just short of £35 million. And Erik's job did become insecure at some point this season too, but it was probably saved by Manchester United winning the first available trophy of the season, the EFL Cup, and in emphatic fashion too, with the final score at Wembley being 4-0. However, the opponents were Rotherham, but the league form continued to slip, even with Ten Hag having to resort to Bruno Fernandes having to play up front because the striker situation still had yet to be addressed. At the end of the season though, the team rescued a 6th place finish, with Arsenal the surprise team dropping from 2nd to 7th. For now though, Sheikh Jassim keeps his faith with Erik ten Hag in charge. And the new season started great with a 4-0 win over Fulham at Old Trafford, and Marcus Thuram was given the nod up front, and he actually did score 2 of the 4 goals. But I don't know how longer he'll be keeping his position, because Erik has signed 3 new strikers this summer and spent another £172 million, while also selling £46 million of players, including the #1 goalkeeper David De Gea to Real Betis and Donny van de Beek to Lyon. Ten Hag decided to replace De Gea with a young French goalkeeper in Alban Lafont for £36 million, but went all out on bringing in striker Victor Osimhen from Napoli for £82 million. That's more like it. Both acquisitions I feel really improved the starting 11, but as I mentioned, they weren't the only signings. The first signing of the summer was actually Vitinha from Marseille, a Portuguese striker around the same age as Osimhen, for £40 million. Backups was also brought into the club, with Guerrero from Real Madrid, Strelic as the now 3rd striker of the window, Mikalenko from Everton to challenge Luke Shaw Malacia at left back, and Van Bournemouth a backup goalkeeper. Those signings also seen players leave on loan and even be listed, like last summer's signing Marcus Thuram, who we just seen score in the first game. Although the run after that game against Fulham wasn't quite as fruitful, and the new signings didn't exactly give the side the boost I thought it would have given them at all. Still down in 6th place, 2/3 of the way through the season, and there was still no sign of the director of football at the club. Manchester United finished in 6th place without a player in any of the top 3 player statistics across the season. Osimhen's goal record in the league was good though, with 16 in 25, equaling his best career season in much fewer games. Aston Villa became the thorn in Ten Hag's season though, knocking them out of the FA Cup in the 3rd round and beating them in the Europa League final on penalties after a 1-1 finish. So this is when things got really interesting for the Qatar era of Manchester United, because Manchester United spent big on a huge star signing Kvaratskhelia from Napoli for £93 million and a world-class centre midfielder in Vencedor from Bilbao, both aged just 24. And these 2 signings certainly made a difference to the team. By New Year, they were sat top of the league and only lost 2 games with the most clean sheets. And they brought in Schlager in January too from Leipzig for £40 million after selling Rabiot, who was a free transfer, remember, for £32 million to Roma. And although they didn't win the league at the end of the season, it was a vast improvement on the 6th place finish beforehand, earning a second spot. And that summer, Ten Hag spent another £130 million bringing in Kenneth Taylor from Ajax and Fikayo Tomori from AC Milan, selling a lot of originals including Jadon Sancho, Anthony Martial, Harry Maguire and Christian Eriksen, as well as others, totaling to £67 million. And Old Trafford also had a much needed renovation recently too, extending the capacity to 120,000 seats. Vitinha left in January to Brighton, and a new star 19-year-old new gem was signed from Palmeiras, the Brazilian winger, Rubran. I had the editor open for this exact reason. We can see his potential sits at 179 out of 200. As well as Arthur Theati was brought in the same month from Bayern Munich. But once again, Manchester United could not catch Liverpool in the league, finishing second 2 seasons in a row. This Liverpool side, who raided Brighton, signing Evan Ferguson, midfielder Moises Caicedo, and Liverpool fans' dream signing Jude Bellingham. The two rivals did also meet in the semi-finals of the Champions League though, and Manchester United eliminated Liverpool 4-3 on aggregate to reach the Champions League final. But unfortunately, Erik Ten Hag couldn't get his 10-man side to lift the trophy when PSG scored 2 goals in extra time after a 2-2 finish in 90 minutes. One of Ten Hag's real-life signings, Antony, has become the key player for Manchester United here going into the next season. And they sold another whopping £174 million through players like Jarrod Bowen and Diogo Dalot, as well as making big profits on players like Shatalo, Strelec, Mikalenko, and even Alejandro Garnacho, finding £3 million replacements like this 19-year-old Nujen Kadosh from Maccabi Tel Aviv. But also well-known players like Vardio from Leipzig for just £66 million, Darwin Núñez for just £30 million, and Tapsoba for £32 million, both from Barcelona. It was arguably his best transfer window yet, only spending £135 million and selling 174, yet still improving the team. And there was still no sign of a director of football at the club. Manchester United edged their rivals in first place with just 10 games to go with a game in hand. And they also sold Luke Shaw in January for £13 million and replaced him with Luka Netz for £48 million. And bringing in cheap wonder kids like this 18-year-old Chilean striker with 166 potential who already looks fantastic. And an Argentinian winger for just £5 million from Velez, again with a really good potential rating. Rashford and Osimhen would share the striker role, with Osimhen mainly coming off the bench but still scoring 13 goals so far. But with a bad run towards the end of the season and a 3-0 advantage squandered in the Champions League quarter-final, it was another trophyless season again for Ten Hag, with Liverpool making it 4 league titles on the bounce and United finishing 3rd behind City. Ten Hag cashed in on Rubran in the next season, who moved to Bayern Munich for £93 million after not really getting a game in Manchester. And other than bringing in Alex Scott from Norwich, Ten Hag only brought in youngsters for the future, which I do admire. However, it didn't work out too great, seeing his team drop back down to 6th place and miles off the pace of Liverpool, also losing to them the FA Cup final 2-1. They did double their trophies won under the Qatar ownership, however, once again winning the EFL Cup against West Ham. And Eric responded by not spending that much money, bringing in Luiz on a free transfer, buying Asprilla from Bayern Munich for just £30 million, and loaning Zaire Emery with an option to buy, while selling 2 of the players he signed last season, albeit for a bit of profit, totaling for £46 million. But it's not like the money isn't there, I just think the AI in Football Manager is so hit and miss with spending it. And the club suffered, finishing in 5th place, while Newcastle ended Liverpool's run winning the league, while also contradicting my point about the game not knowing how to spend the cash. Osimhen had a great season though, but the City rivals made sure Manchester United were trophyless once again this year, beating them in the FA Cup final quite comfortably, with Carlo Ancelotti at the helm. Despite having a lot of money though, Manchester United are doing a great job at making it compared to real life with their transfers out of the club. But it seems the signing of big-name players have been thrown out the window, with opting to go for young, hungry talents with potential instead. And Manchester United got back into the Champions League after finishing in 4th place despite this transfer avenue change. Still no luck in the Cups though, on another trophyless season. And then came the most bonkers season yet, because the summer seeing United sign Dacho Fofana for £81 million, who was at Dortmund, and Wilfried Gnonto for £57 million from Arsenal, while selling Victor Osimhen to Roma for £31 million and Darwin Núñez to Villarreal for £36 million. And then selling Gnonto in January to PSG after only 3 starts and 1 goal for a loss of £10 million for what they brought him for. But they continue to sign some of the best new gens available for unbelievable prices. Ten Hag signed this Croatian striker who was just 18 at the time for just £1.3 million. Then in January he signed one of the world's best attacking midfielders from Sporting for just £42 million after add-ons, a steal for a player who at that quality sits at around 180 current ability. And in the same month signed a new gen Brazilian striker from Flamengo for just £19 million who looks fantastic, aged 19 and has 175 potential. And also signing Livramento for just £40 million at right back, finishing in second place behind a Liverpool side who only lost 1 game all season. And recently signed Jamal Musiala. But I think this team is cursed because they lost in the FA Cup final once again to Arsenal after being 1-0 up to go another year without a trophy. In the 10th and final season, they sold Alex Scott to PSG, as well as the French winger they signed from Marseille for almost double the price they bought him for, and the Croatian striker to Bayern Munich, and surprisingly the Chilean striker who never really played any games for the club to Inter Milan, selling a whopping £195 million worth of transfers. With the worst really being Rashford to Arsenal for just £2.5 million and Lisandro Martinez to Aston Villa for £3 million, who are both aged 35 now. With the replacements all being slightly underwhelming, with the best being an £88 million signing of England international Luke Rumble, who not only has the coolest name but unbelievable attributes. And at age just 22, he still could get better with his potential reaching 187. But still, this team could only achieve a 4th place finish, despite having some of the best young talents in the world. And by March, they are out of the Champions League and the FA Cup, and you guessed it, were trophyless. So in just 10 years of Sheikh Jassim's ownership with Ten Hag at the manager's spot, Football Manager predicts just 2 League Cups only for the red side of Manchester. Oh dear.